Chapters 1 through 3 Alarms and Discursions by G. K. Chesterton. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Chapter 1 Introductory on Gargoyles. Alone at some distance from the wasting halls of a disused abbey, I found half sunken in the grass the grey and goggle-eyed visage of one of those graven monsters that made the ornamental waterspouts in the cathedrals of the Middle Ages. It lay there, scoured by ancient rains or striped by recent fungus, but still looking like the head of some huge dragon slain by a primeval hero. And as I looked at it, I thought of the meaning of the grotesque, and passed into some symbolic reverie of the three great stages of art. 1. Once upon a time there lived upon an island a merry and innocent people, mostly shepherds and tillers of the earth. They were republicans, like all primitive and simple souls. They talked over their affairs under a tree, and the nearest approach they had to a personal ruler was a sort of priest or white witch who said their prayers for them. They worshipped the sun, not idolatrously, but as the golden crown of the god, whom all such infants see almost as plainly as the sun. Now this priest was told by his people to build a great tower, pointing to the sky in salutation of the sun god, and he pondered long and heavily before he picked his materials, for he was resolved to use nothing that was not almost as clear and exquisite as sunshine itself. He would use nothing that was not washed as white as the rain can wash the heavens, nothing that did not sparkle as spotlessly as that crown of God. He would have nothing grotesque or obscure. He would not have even anything emphatic or even anything mysterious. He would have all the arches as light as laughter and as candid as logic. He built the temple in 3 concentric courts, which were cooler and more exquisite in substance each than the other. For the outer wall was a hedge of white lilies, ranked so thick that a green stalk was hardly to be seen, and the wall within that was of crystal, which smashed the sun into 1,000,000 stars. And the wall within that, which was the tower itself, was a tower of pure water, forced up in an everlasting fountain, and upon the very tip and crest of that foaming spire was one big and blazing diamond, which the water tossed up eternally and caught again as a child catches a ball. "Now," said the priest, "I have made a tower which is a little worthy of the sun." 2. But about this time the island was caught in a swarm of pirates, and the shepherds had to turn themselves into rude warriors and seamen, and at first they were utterly broken down in blood and shame, and the pirates might have taken the jewel flung up for ever from their sacred font. And then, after years of horror and humiliation, they gained a little and began to conquer, because they did not mind defeat. And the pride of the pirates went sick with them after a few unexpected foils, and at last the invasion rolled back into the empty seas, and the island was delivered. And for some reason after this, men began to talk quite differently about the temple and the sun. Some indeed said, "You must not touch the temple. It is classical, it is perfect, since it admits no imperfections." But the others answered, "In that it differs from the sun, that sun that shines on the evil and the good, and on the mud and the monsters everywhere. The temple is of the noon. It is made of white marble clouds and sapphire sky. But the sun is not always of the noon. The sun dies daily. Every night he is crucified in blood and fire." Now the priest had taught and fought through all the war, and his hair had grown white. But his eyes had grown young, and he said, "I was wrong, and they are right. The sun, the symbol of our Father, gives life to all those earthly things that are full of ugliness and energy. All the exaggerations are right, if they exaggerate the right thing. Let us point to heaven with tusks and horns and fins and trunks and tails, so long as they all point to heaven. The ugly animals praise God as much as the beautiful. The frog's eyes stand out of his head because he is staring at heaven. The giraffe's neck is long because he is stretching towards heaven. The donkey has ears to hear. Let him hear." And under the new inspiration they planned a gorgeous cathedral in the Gothic manner, with all the animals of the earth crawling over it, and all the possible ugly things making up one common beauty, because they all appealed to the god. The columns of the temple were carved like the necks of giraffes, the dome was like an ugly tortoise, and the highest pinnacle was a monkey standing on his head with his tail pointing at the sun. And yet the whole was beautiful, because it was lifted up in one living and religious gesture, as a man lifts his hands in prayer. 3. But this great plan was never properly completed. The people had brought up on great wagons the heavy tortoise roof and the huge necks of stone, and all the 1,001 oddities that made up that unity, the owls and the elves and the crocodiles and the kangaroos, which, hideous by themselves, might have been magnificent if reared in one definite proportion and dedicated to the sun. For this was Gothic, this was romantic, this was Christian art. This was the whole advance of Shakespeare upon Sophocles. And that symbol which was to crown it all, the ape upside down, was really Christian, for man is the ape upside down. But the rich, who had grown riotous in the long peace, obstructed the thing, and in some squabble a stone struck the priest on the head, and he lost his memory. He saw piled in front of him frogs and elephants, monkeys and giraffes, toadstools and sharks, all the ugly things of the universe which he had collected to do honour to God. But he forgot why he had collected them. He could not remember the design or the object. He piled them all wildly into one heap 50 feet high, and when we had done it all, the rich and influential went into a passion of applause and cried, "This is real art. This is realism. This is things as they really are." That, I fancy, is the only true origin of realism. Realism is simply romanticism that has lost its reason. This is so, not merely in the sense of insanity, but of suicide. It has lost its reason, that is, its reason for existing. The old Greeks summoned godlike things to worship their god. The medieval Christians summoned all things to worship theirs, dwarfs and pelicans, monkeys and madmen. The modern realists summon all these million creatures to worship their god, and then have no god for them to worship. Paganism was in art a pure beauty. That was the dawn. Christianity was a beauty created by controlling a million monsters of ugliness, and that, in my belief, was the zenith and the noon. Modern art and science practically mean having the million monsters and being unable to control them, and I will venture to call that the disruption and the decay. The finest lengths of the Elgin marbles consist splendid houses going to the temple of a virgin. Christianity, with its gargoyles and grotesques, really amounted to saying this, that a donkey could go before all the horses of the world when it was really going to the temple. Romance means a holy donkey going to the temple. Realism means a lost donkey going nowhere. The fragments of feudal journalism or fleeting impression which are here collected are very like the wrecks and riven blocks that were piled in a heap around my imaginary priest of the sun. They are very like that grey and gaping head of stone that I found overgrown with the grass. Yet I will venture to make even of these trivial